This video is on docReader. Now, docReader is what you will use when you have a Word document, a PowerPoint, or a PDF, plain text, rich text, EPUBs. All of those are what you use docReader for. Let's look at our syllabus. When students are learning about ReadSpeaker, teach them eyes to the top of the page. If you don't have a listen button, then go to your drop-down and choose Open with docReader. You want to do that and not this Open with docReader button down at the bottom, because if you click on the button at the bottom and it's not a true document of some sort, in other words, it might be an HTML file, it might be an audio or a video file, anything like that, you're going to get an error message. So you don't want your students to run into that possibility. So with eyes to the top, they look for the listen button. It's not there. So they use this little drop down and they click Open with docReader. One of the first things that you see when you open your document in docReader is you have thumbnails over here on the left. If it's multiple pages, you would see all of them. You can also use your headings. If your document uses true headings, once again, you want things to be accessible so that students can use them. This is a reason why every student would want an accessible document. If you used headings in your Word document, or you use the heading commands when you are in your PDF, then they will appear here on the left, and you can then navigate to the page that you want easier than you can play Guess Which Thumbnail. Now, once you have chosen your page, you can collapse that sidebar so that you have more real estate for your document. We have the standard listen, and it works the same way that it did in WebReader. You also have your layout, which is the normal way a document looks, and your text mode. Notice how everything left justified and all the headings adjusted to the size font that we have chosen in settings, and we're going to look at settings here in a moment. Other things we have is how do you change pages? You can change pages by your drop down, your up and your down arrow, clicking on thumbnails, clicking on headings, or if it's multiple pages, clicking on your left and your right arrow. But let's expand the toolbar. In settings, we have a few things we want to look at. The first one is automatic page flip. You can say yes, turn page automatically and continue reading, and you don't have to turn the page. It's going to do it for you. This lower row of tools are the power tools in docReader. So right here, we want to say, yes, remember the toolbar state, so it will stay expanded, because in order to get to this menu, it is expanded. The next thing we want to do is to automatically close the pop-up menu, which is that little menu that says Listen, Translate, and Dictionary. The rest of the settings are picking your sentence and your word color. I think I'll choose the underline for my sentence and light blue for my words. You have your text colors, your font size, your font. You can choose all those. Once again, you have basically the same fonts that we did in WebReader. Something new that we have is text spacing. Notice I'm seeing what I've chosen below. Watch how it changes as I increase the spacing between the letters. Now, this is going to be useful to a small group of students, maybe those with lower vision, maybe those that are dyslexic, anyone who needs to be able to separate those letters. It's there as a choice. And down here at the bottom, we can restore our default settings if we want to. I'm going to say close and scroll back up to the top of my document. So let's look at what we have as power tools. We talked about the page mask before. We have it here. We can make it larger or smaller. We can push it up and down. Because docReader is sheets of paper, we can also use the center area of our mouse to move the paper instead of the mask. The question here just tells you what to do to enable your keyboard commands, and it's going to vary according to the browser you're using and the iOS system that you're using. The next tool is a reading ruler, old-fashioned, called note card. You can make it larger, you can make it smaller. You can move the paper or the ruler, that's up to you. It helps you stay online and build focus. You can download the file to MP3. Now, when you are looking at downloading the file to MP3 in docReader, each page has to be downloaded separately. We always suggest making a folder that is the name of the document and then download it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If you have 10 pages, then instead of 1 through 9, what you want to do is 0, 1, 0, 2 up through 0, 9. Some MP3 players will reorder the files in it if you don't have them all the same number of digits long. So you're setting up your tracking method and ensuring it. Your MP3 device, you transfer it to it by the way you would typically transfer to an MP3 device, such as for an iPhone, I would have to use iTunes. But there are other types of MP3 devices out there. There are some that work just like a flash drive. Others use other types of transfer programs to do this. So you need to know your particular device, how it works. If you're uncertain, you can look at the user guide, or most likely you can go to YouTube and search for it, and there's probably a video there. We can download our document to a PDF. We can print our document, but the power is right here with these 3 tools. These are our highlighters. As a student, when they click on the highlighter, they can use the arrow and choose what color they want to highlight it. Now, this could be based off of information that they are color coding different ways for whatever reason. If they're colorblind, we also have borders. Now I'm going to highlight with all 4 colors. And I wanted to do this to show you that first off, yellow is always an underline, blue is always dashes, green's dots, and red is solid. We can collect these and download them. But before I do that, I want to show you something that you can do as an instructor. Students don't necessarily know how to study for your subject, because you don't study the same way in any 2 courses. So because of that, you need to teach them. In the first article that they have to read for you, go in and highlight it, and then hide those highlights from your students. In your discussion about the article, try to extract the information that you wanted them to get out of it. Once you have done that, if you're using your computer, you can show them the highlights and explain to them why they were important. If you're not using your computer, you can do what the students would do with their notes, which is collect and download them. We can collect the whole document or only the current page. Always do the whole document. The reason for this is if you don't do it and you change computers or you clear your cache, you've lost your highlights. So always do everything. How to sort them? Well, it all depends on what the student is doing. If the student is doing it and different colors mean different things, then they want to collect by color. If you're doing it, then you want to do it by position so that the student can follow the position to highlight up their document. Showing or not showing the colors and the borders, or unchecking the ones you don't want, you can do that. I always say, give me everything. Let's collect and download it. When I name this, I always want to put underscores in my name instead of spaces. You can also use a hyphen. The reason why is different operating systems and browsers may put a %20 for that space, and that's going to confuse the student. We're going to save it. I've now opened it, and I'm going to move my screen up just a little bit more. Up here in the URL, we can see the name we gave it, and that's how the student would be filing it. This right here, we can't change. We did this by color. Notice it's alphabetical for the colors: blue, green, red, yellow. The students now have the information. When you're highlighting or you're showing this to your students about highlighting, always stress highlight a complete sentence, because your notes will get cold. And when they get cold, you'll lose what they're about. Let's say for some reason we want to get rid of the information. We can clear the page or the complete document and say, yes, clear it. Notice also that when I highlight something, I can click on the highlight and say delete the highlight if I don't want it. The next thing is how to change voices. Remember, the voice you choose should match the language of the document. You don't want to pick a French voice for an English document because it's not going to sound right when it's read. If it's an English document, pick some type of English to use it in, and you can see the different voices. The last thing I want to show you is about enlarged text. First off, we saw we could change our text size if we wanted to, but we can also blow up the document with the zoom in, or we can minimize it with the zoom out and take it back down to its regular size or smaller if we want it smaller. That's up to you, but you can change the size of the document and what you're seeing on screen.